It's Nil by Mouth.
This is Nil by Mouth. I'm Eddie Nil. This time around it's a little bit of a different format. It's just interviews, no music. Simply because I think there's better shows out there doing DIY or showcasing DIY punk at the moment, namely No Future and Chaos from Niall Keane on CRCFM, and I think it's called Sounds from the Basement. Young Ben from 50 Foot Woman's show on Word FM on a Friday night. I think that's it. I should have really done my research on that one. There's gonna be interviews, not all punk, mostly punk. Majority of it will be punk. I just like talking to interesting people. I think that's why I've decided to even start doing this again. So without further ado, our first interviewee is somebody I like to call a good friend. I know him maybe 3-4 years. He's such a lovely guy. Very, very talented musician. Got a great fucking life story. That's why I'm really proud of this interview. Like, to be honest, I really didn't need to say that much in it, which is great. He just went off and told a story, which is fantastic. Def Nettle themselves have a single coming out pretty soon. It's called Boat Race. It's going to be out on streaming platforms on November the 7th. So check that out.
It's Nil by Mouth.
There's gonna be stuff that we'll talk about that we probably don't want to.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I never want to do that. I never want to embarrass anybody.
Yeah. I can do that on my own. The story of my life.
Fucking gas. I think the first time I met you, I was told about you by Pete Dancer.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. And I think the first time I met you was in the Sugar Club. I was really fucking drunk. And I remember I was in the toilet having a piss and talking to a guy next to me about you.
Yes.
You're a lovely guy, never met him, blah, blah, blah. And I just heard a voice from behind me. Oh, thanks for saying that. And I was fucking you. And you were in the toilet, do you remember that?
Yes, yeah. It's funny. That's not the first time in my life that's happened.
I was so embarrassed. But then I was like, I think everything I said was nice, right?
Yeah. The guy was like, "Oh, who'd you come to see?" And you were saying our band, Def Nettle, so that was cool. It was nice. No, it was good you were there. That was the first time I played as Def Nettle.
Was it?
Yeah. So that was cool.
How did you find that gig? Because I really drunk, but I loved it. I thought it was great. I seem to remember dancing as well.
Yeah, it was weird. I'd never played a seated gig before in my life, and I've played a lot of gigs, and it was the first time I've ever been at a seated gig where I was. You know how it is with gigs. You go in with the mentality you're going to do it no matter what.
Yeah.
And you don't there's nerves there like anybody, but I was like, well, this is it. So whatever I get here, it's my first time doing it as Def Nettle anyway, so I'm going to have a good time no matter what happens.
Yeah.
You don't always win in that situation, you know. We had another gig a few months ago where it was late and we were waiting around all day, and I didn't win. I didn't keep that mentality, you know. But that Sugarcoat gig, I definitely really enjoyed myself, and it was cool because like I was saying, I'd been in the States for many years and in Germany and stuff. So that night that gig was on, there was a lot of people I hadn't seen in 20 years.
In a long time.
Yeah. So that was cool because I was looking at people that were there to support me and were really nice and were up for it and maybe surprised I was doing it. So I was like, all right, well, I got to show them, you know. And it was cool to show people the songs for the first time.
Yeah.
I
loved it. I thought it was very good now. It was great.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
That's nice. Yeah.
How big of a departure is that then for you from what you were doing?
I think it's more like an evolution. It's probably closer to what I was doing when I was 18 than when I was 28 or 38. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's probably a return rather than a change.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and there's been sporadic bits throughout my career that where I came close to doing that again.
Yeah.
So a lot of my time in music, a lot of my life I was a DJ.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the time I was in the background of a band, or I was involved in the production of a band, or even I did a lot of tech work as well in the States. I was an engineer, a sound engineer and a tech for the Stagehands Union in San Francisco, Local 16. So my whole life, I've always been involved in music.
Yeah.
And I think like it's funny. I just saw a thing on Instagram. It was a flyer or a poster for the first Lollapalooza.
Yeah.
Right, and that was 1991.
Wow.
And the bands that were on it were Jane's Addiction, Butthole Surfers, Living Colour, and I can't remember who else right now, mate. But I remember I looked at it like yesterday and I was like, oh, that's funny because that's kind of what I think about a lot of the time when I'm making Def Nettle stuff is that era.
Really, yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us, like, a lot of people, we get stuck in an era. You get into something when you're a teenager and you stay in that your whole life. Yeah. And so, like, in my teenage years, I was definitely more into, like, even pre-91, because I was a teenager in the 90s or whatever, in the 80s. So, I was born in 73, so yeah. So in the 80s when I was a teenager in Dublin or whatever, I was into like some punk stuff and The Cure and a bit of a Cure, a bit of Smiths, bit of, all that type of thing, a little bit of goth and stuff. And then, the rave thing hit, but I'd been going back and forth to New York a lot because my old man lived there and I'd lived there when I was a child. So I always had a keen interest in hip hop as well. Brilliant. And then when I started DJing, that's kind of the angle I took when I was DJing in the 90s because there weren't a lot of people playing it in Dublin. And I was going back and forth to States a lot. I had a lot of the records and people didn't have them. They wanted to hear them. So I ended up really kind of focusing as doing a lot of hip hop stuff. But a lot of the weirder kind of trip hoppy British stuff was getting in there as well. In the 90s. Okay, it wasn't pure hip hop, like, and I'm sure the hip hop heads would tell you that before I did. I've never really been a purist. But that era came and went, and then I moved to the States in 2001, and I landed in Williamsburg in Brooklyn, and the dance thing had always been weird in America, and I wasn't typically a dance DJ. I started playing a lot of hip hop clubs because I needed to make money. I landed just a couple of weeks before 9/11.
Oh,
so like a job I was supposed to work in ended right away and all that stuff. So I was doing a lot of hip hop gigs just for money, but my heart wasn't that much in it. And I was going to Plant Bar, which was in the Lower East Side. It was owned by a guy I'd gone to college with here in Ireland. And the barmen were like all the guys from DFA, Chick, LCD Sound System, all those dudes worked there. And at the same time in Williamsburg, the Electroclash thing was going on. So, God, a lot of the names elude me right now. Fisher Spooner, that sort of stuff. So it was kind of punky and it was kind of DIY.
Yeah.
There was an element of dance music to the thing, but there was also like a lot of live instrumentation involved.
So is this the same scene that the Strokes would have come out of and stuff like that?
Yeah, they would have been more of the rock and roll scene, and this would have been the more punkier kind of DIYer version,
Okay.
The yeahs would have been kind of on the side of it. Peaches, that sort of stuff. Like one of the first shows I went to was Peaches in LCD Sound System, that kind of thing. Brilliant. Before they kind of blew up. And in Warsaw in Williamsburg. And so there was a couple of, like, Larry T was a DJ. He's kind of well known. He wrote a couple of the RuPaul songs, but he also did a lot of that. A lot of those guys really shunned the name Electroclash because they thought it was too trendy and too... Right. So even though I'm using that word, I use it with a bit of disdain.
Right.
But I liked that scene because it was very open sexually. You could be whoever you wanted to be. It was very different from the scene I left in Dublin where it was like, play pure hip hop, play house music, and it hadn't evolved here yet. The rock and roll thing hadn't come in. I think the Strokes had played a small show in Dublin just before I left.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it was gonna come in here, but it hadn't yet. And it was just before the internet blew up as well. So it was the start of all that. Vice magazine were based on that block where I lived. They had just moved from Canada, So there was definitely a kind of raw, creative vibe going on there. And I got into that. And I did a couple of songs with the guy I mentioned that owned Plant Bar, Dominique Keegan. And funny, he's coming to my house this weekend. I haven't seen him in a few years.
That's crazy.
He's in Ireland for the weekend. He still lives in New York and he works in publishing in the music business, which he always kind of did on the side. But I wrote a song with him one day because he was wanting to do vocals. He hadn't really done any before. And he was running that bar where all these bands were playing and all this. Well, it was actually just a DJ bar. The bands weren't playing there. But a lot of them, like the members of Chick were working behind the bar and this type of thing. And the Rapture were there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You know, and Luke from the Rapture I knew, he worked there, and you know, just that kind of scene. And Dom was really into that kind of stuff, and he was like, hey, you know, you've got a little studio in Brooklyn, we make me a beat, we'll do something. We were on the piss that night, and next day I got up and he was like, yeah, will you do that with me? And I did it with him, and you know, threw him a copy of what we'd done that day, didn't think that much of it, and deleted the files by accident.
Oh no!
And a couple of weeks later he called me up and he's like, oh, we got to mix that track, I got a deal for us at this label in Germany. And I was like, oh shit, you know. So we actually had to re-record it.
Oh my God.
And we put it out on 4 Music. It was a sub. 4 Music's a big label, indie label in Germany, and it was a sub of that called Fine Records that was run in London. And people like Princess Superstar. There was kind of a indie rapper guy called Mocky from Canada on there. And all of a sudden, you know, we were getting gigs in Germany. I was flying from New York to Berlin. We were going out to LA. We were, you know, just on this one song. We were going down to Miami and stuff like that. So that was cool.
Yeah.
I was dead broke kind of thing. It was just after 9/11. So at least it was kind of, I was still playing a lot of the hip hop bars and playing Irish bars as well as a DJ to kind of pay the bills. And we did a number of songs and we put them out. And I ended up doing that for close to 10 years. The band was called The Glass. And that was great. It was a good kind of. I think the reason why I'm veering off to that is because you asked, is this a different thing than what I'd done? And in a way, The Glass was related to that. There were guitars in it.
Yeah.
And Dom was the lead vocalist, but I did backing vocals, and I played off synths and samplers and stuff like that in that band. So there was definitely like a lunge into what I'm doing around then.
Yeah.
There was definitely a Cure influence to that, even though there was a lot of dance stuff going on with it, because Dom would be more house music oriented. But I was always trying to drag it, even though he's a great guitarist as well. But I was always trying to drag it back into something a bit more with lyrical or, you know. And that was the push and pull of us as music partners in a way as well, because I was the programmer, he was the singer, you know.
Yeah.
And so I definitely did have that. Now, during that time, I had done all my 90s stuff as DJ Wool. Yeah. And during that time, I'd started doing remixes again under the DJ Wool name when I didn't have, you know, a lot of time with Dom, or, you know, we had time off. And we were going to Berlin a lot. Because we had the label, we'd an agent there, and she was great at getting us gigs around Germany, which
brilliant.
I mean,
playing
around Germany is fantastic.
Fantastic,
you know, being a young guy in a band in Germany in the summer is just so fun. And then we'd have DJ gigs that went along with it, and it was just brilliant. And I started, I released on a couple of labels there, and a couple of labels up in Finland. Top Billin', it was kind of like breakbeaty, kind of a hip hop influenced dance label, and I was doing remixes for them and mastering their stuff, and so I'd be going up there to play, and there was a few little labels in the UK I was releasing on, just doing little DJ Wool things, and at the time I was kind of sick in New York.
Right.
A friend of mine had OD'd. It was kind of a downer. I'd been doing that band The Glass for 10 years, and it was just kind of, I didn't want to do it anymore, and I don't think Dom the singer did want to do it anymore. I don't think we weren't going to get signed to a major or something, you know, and that scene was just petering out a little bit, you know, and the internet had come in, and it was a little less of that scene, and New York became a lot more expensive, things were changing, and I had noticed I was just going to Berlin a lot, and with The Glass we would go to Germany or Europe for a tour, and we'd rent an apartment in Berlin for a month, so you could stop there and go off at the weekend, you know, it was really cheap to do at the time. My girlfriend was finishing college, and I was like, you know what, I think I'm just going to go to Germany for a year, because I've got, you know, 3 gigs a month for the next year if I want. And she came with me, and we ended up, that was 2007, we ended up staying there for 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
So that was like coming out of big party scene in New York into Berlin, and it was
another party scene.
You know, the first year I was a good boy.
Oh really?
Yeah, I was pretty good, because I'd come out of, like, as I said, a friend of mine ODing and stuff, and I had been drinking and playing too much in New York. And first year, I wouldn't say I was good, but I was better. Yeah. You know, and then a mate of mine who will go unnamed, let's just say he worked for Depeche Mode for a while.
Oh wow.
He arrived over, and no fault of his own.
Yeah.
I take full responsibility. The two of us went mad for about 2 years, you know, and you know, that kind of, and I was traveling at the weekends to DJ, so, and I was working every day in the studio, and I you know, related to that, when I was in The Glass, a lot of our music had started to get on TV shows and ads and stuff, not so much ads, but more like CSI Miami and this kind of thing.
Yeah.
When I was in the States, and I'd stayed with those people, in touch with those people in LA. So when I was doing the DJ Wool stuff, I was actually doing a lot of licensing to the States of that stuff, and I ended up doing remixes of certain kind of hip hop and poppy bands, and they were getting licensed, and I'd have parts of them. So I was surviving with that and DJing in the States, and then I got burnt out 4 years into Berlin. Every weekend going to Mannheim, going to Holland, going to Munich, going here and going there, and coming over to Ireland for gigs. And I'd been DJing for 15 years or so straight, and I was done. I was a wreck. And the missus was kind of like, I'm moving to California, I don't know what you're doing. Wow. And I was like, you know what, I think, there was an inkling that I could get into the Stagehands Union in San Francisco.
Right.
It was just a dream, but I knew one person, and I said, you know what, like, I've been DJing for 15, 20 years, I've been on this roll. I'm like, let me, like, cop on for a minute. I was 37 or something like that, and I was like, let me just figure myself out a little bit here. And I quit the whole thing in Berlin. That was tough. Because I loved it. I had a beautiful, huge apartment. It was like €700 a month, and
it's a great city.
Had my studio. All my friends were there, but I also knew, like, I was sick of myself. Right. My mates were sick of me. I was drinking way too much, and it just was like I was spiraling a little bit. I was really into skateboarding all my life, so that was the only thing that kind of saved me during that time. Wow. I skated a lot when I was in Berlin. I hadn't done in 10 years, so that kind of kept me a little physically well. I was skating a lot, and I broke my ankle, and a few things happened, and I was like, you know what, like, I could see this petering out. Let me go grow up a little bit. I mean, for one, I hate to use that term, but it's what I thought.
I understand.
It's what I thought. And I went, also, as I was saying, I'd owned a house here, and I'd sold it, and then I'd reinvested it with something with my mum. We lost the whole thing.
Oh, God.
So, like, all my life savings had disappeared around then. So I was like, if I can get into this union in San Francisco, I could maybe make a few quid. And, like, within a year, I married my missus. She was pregnant, and we were living in San Francisco. Now, it took me a little longer to get in the union than I was hoping, so I had a bit of a rough year. It was the only time in my life I didn't really play a lot, and that was around, let me see, maybe 2013 or so. Then I got into that union. And
so tell us, what is the Stagehands Union? That's like stage crew work, is it?
Yes. Yeah, okay. So every venue, every hotel, anywhere there's a microphone put up in that city, there's a union hand on it. Yeah. Brilliant. So my dream was to get into the symphony there. Right. That was my big dream. When you get in the union, it's like being in the military. They say to you, if you're going to do this, you have to be on call for 3 years straight, 24/7, 365 days a year.
Wow.
But they also say, if you do that, you'll get to work. Yeah. If you dedicate yourself to it, we'll take care of you. So I was in as an audio engineer. In the beginning, you're working 3 or 4 days a week, but the money's pretty good. You're talking, $40-50 an hour. Excellent. And it doubles after 8 hours, and on the 6th day it doubles, and so you're talking.
So you really good sort of like backing, and you've really good like support. A contract that you're working on and support.
It's amazing, and they're doing so. One day, we lived about an hour north of San Francisco in Sonoma, so that's kind of, it's union as well, but it's all centered around a venue up there. Right. So I would work there at the weekends, and then Monday to Friday I'd be in the city. Now in the city I could be doing, I did everything from filming an open heart surgery to like sweeping stages. Right. Had to learn how to do scissor lifts and boom lifts to put, we'd be putting speakers in warehouses, 50 feet in the air, and like hardcore work. And I'd never done that before, and I loved it. I was like, you know what? I have a kid. My son was just born, and I was like, I can make a bunch of money here. All I gotta do is shut up and get on with it. Yeah. So I did that for 5 years, and it was really difficult, like physically, I was a wreck, but I loved every minute of it. I was like, all right, I'm a real man.
There's something to be said about that, isn't there?
It was amazing.
A job that you love, that there's job satisfaction with. Like.
There is, and if you took a day off, if you had a day off, if you called the union and told them you had a day out where you weren't booked, they would put you in a course that day. Wow. And so if you did that 7 days a week for the 3 years, they would so I learned everything from video, all sorts of lighting, you name it, any kind of stagecraft, carpentry. I did everything you can imagine. I did everything they asked me because I was so grateful. I was like, I spent 20 years on the piss here. Yeah, that was great. Yeah, but like these people are willing to believe in me and give me a shot at something else, and I did that. And I was like, I'll have a little studio up near where I live, and I'll still make music and whatever. Yeah. So that went on for 4 or 5 years, and I did end up in the symphony. And a branch of the symphony opened up near where I lived in Sonoma. So I really did start working for California State Symphony through the union. But I was always making music, and I did an album that actually came out 2016 on a New York label at the time. So I was able to go play the odd gig. I wasn't playing every weekend, but I was keeping my hand in, and I was satisfied. And I got really into analog gear at the time. Right. So I was making a lot of money, so I was buying a lot of synths and outboard gear and all that type of shit, which I have now, which is I use every day. But somewhere along the line there, I was driving to work one day, and the phone rang. I had a big truck. It was California. My wife bought me this huge pickup. I'd sent her out to Oakland or to East Bay to buy me because I was working to buy. She was like, I'll go pick it up. And it was a small little silver truck that I was going to buy because I was moving equipment all the time. Yeah. And I got home that night and she bought me like
the biggest fucking thing.
I had this huge silver pickup truck, like a proper hick. But you know what? It ended up being great because I used to sleep in it and all when I was off on jobs, and I loved the thing. But anyway, me and my huge big American truck were driving around down the highway one day, and I seen the number ring, and it was an 087 number. And I haven't been in Ireland in 5 years, and I was like, 087, I know where that's from, 35387. I was like, Ireland, And, I didn't answer it, because you just don't know. And I pulled off to a garage, and I called it back, and it was a lady in Limerick, and she was like, hey, I work for Dolores O'Riordan from the Cranberries, and someone recommended you as a mix engineer, and I was like, cool. She was like, well, Dolores is going to call you in the next couple of weeks, just so you know.
Just like that, yeah.
And I was like, okay. She was like, do you know who Dolores is? I was like, yeah, I do. And I was like, cool. And like 2 days later, Dolores gave me a ring, and she was deadly. Yeah. She was like it was like talking to yourself, right. Like we immediately hit it off, and so she was mixing an album at the time. She recorded a bit of it. They weren't mixing it yet. She'd done an album with Andy Rourke from the Smiths, who's sadly passed away a few weeks ago. But I had done some work with Andy in the past, so I'd met him on tour a few times. He'd lived beside me in New York, and he was doing a band called Jetlag. And they'd remixed The Glass, who I was in, and DJ Wool, who I was in. Wow. So I'd kind of gotten to know him a little bit, and plus we partied together. And it was just brilliant character, you know. And for me, meeting Andy for me was like the one time in my life I was starstruck. I've worked with a bunch of stars, but when I met Andy the first night, I was on a tour in San Francisco with The Glass, and I was up playing, and he got up on stage beside me and was just hanging out because he was DJing afterwards, and he was hanging out while I was playing, and it was just mind blowing, because the Smiths to me were the greatest band of all time when I was a teenager in Ireland, and so cut a long story short, anyway, Dolores was talking about she was doing an album with Andy. And Andy, through another friend of ours, had recommended. She kept firing engineers because they were hired by her ex-husband or something. I don't know, and they'd broken up, so they were having a hard time finding an engineer to mix it. And there was also, they'd been recording it all around America and Ireland and all over the world, and it was a lot of computers full of a lot of files. And so the job wasn't just mixing; it was pulling it together, So. I ended up starting work for her. In the beginning like that, it was on the weekends because I was still working for the symphony and for the union and all that. And so the album came slowly together over a year or two, and I ended up going down to LA and mixing that. So I mixed that album. It's called Dark, and it was a collaboration between Dolores O'Riordan and Andy Rourke. And so I mixed that record and kind of got in with that scene a little bit, but still kept my job. I was like, I was in America, so I needed 2 kids at that point, so I needed health insurance, I needed retirement, my mortgage was crazy. I had 2 mortgages at the time, I was barely making it, So that was cool because it helped me out a little bit, and in fact from working on that I built a studio in our land in Sonoma in California, and bought more since, bought more equipment, which now I can't even house. I have so much equipment, I have an attic full of gear that hasn't been opened in 5 years. But so mixed that record, and then so we'd been in California then for 5 or 6 years, And Dolores started calling me with the, I'm going on tour.
Tour, yeah.
I'm going on tour. You're coming. And I was like, no, I can't. Like, I just can't.
Yeah.
So she's like, look, we're gonna do a tour of Ireland as Dark. Why don't you come over for the weekend? And sent me the tickets and all. She'd be like, you're coming.
Yeah.
And that was it. So I arrived in Ireland. They cancelled the tour the day I got here.
Oh no!
And they all stayed in LA.
Oh my god!
I was down in Limerick, and I hadn't even been in Ireland in 5 years. Which was cool because I ended up DJing. Did I play for Joe? I think, Joe Clark probably hired me. I don't know if you know Joe. Manages Thumper and all those kind of bands.
Thumper,
DJ
Thumper,
Cormac
right?
and all. Scattered Ashes. I just mixed a song. I mixed the last single of Scattered Ashes, who Joe manages. But Joe probably got me the gig anyway, so I played. I ended up DJing in Limerick and in Dublin, and I hadn't been in Ireland for 5 or 6 years, so it was a great buzz being home. And I got the bug. Like, I was like, oh, this is cool. It's nice, because when I left Dublin, I was sick of it.
Yeah.
And this was, 15 years later, and I was like, oh, I kind of like this. This is nice being back in Ireland. And so I went back to the missus, and at this point, it was the middle of Trump's first election, and she was full-blown like, whatever you do, get me the fuck out of America. Yeah. And she's from California. So there was another band, I can't think of their name, they're kind of indie band from Denmark. And I was in the running to be a tech for them on a tour, as well as the Cranberries tour. And I wasn't sure which one it was going to be. So we were going to move to Denmark for a while. But I was still worried about quitting the job, you know what I mean? When you're 2 kids and mortgages. But my wife was like, look, we'll sell the gaff. Like, I'm done. We'll go live in Ireland and be poor. We're always been poor, but you know what I mean. We'll make it somehow. We'll get by. Like, because at the time we didn't see our kids. I left the house at 6 in the morning. I was back at midnight, and that was on a good day. And other nights I would just sleep in my truck in the city, And my wife was driving 2-3 hours a day to work. Kids were in daycare. There was Mexican ladies picking them up in the morning, putting them to sleep at night. And so that didn't make sense. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, if you're trying to be a parent, not that the Mexican ladies weren't absolutely brilliant and really good.
They're your kids, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we got pitched one night. We were in the gaff, and she was trying to talk me into it. She's like, quit the job, which is very unlike my wife. And I was like, I can't. I got a state pension. I'm like, we're getting all our teeth redone for free. Like, you know what I mean? We're at that age. I've got 3D printed teeth.
You're joking.
No, I'm not joking. Amazing shit. Like, and it's California, and it's state fucking health insurance. And just as we were having this argument, Dolores rang, and it was about midnight that night. And we were half pitched. And Dolores is like, this is the last time I'm asking you. And she's like, I'm offering you the job of mixing the Cranberries on tour. So you can be the mix engineer on tour of the Cranberries, but you have to tell me in the next 24 hours if you're going to do it or not. And I remember my missus just grabbed the phone. She's like, hi Dolores, haven't met you before, but we're doing it. I remember her doing that. And so a lot of politics then ensued, and I didn't end up mixing the Cranberries, because there was a lot of politics, as there always is when you're in the music business in Ireland more than anywhere else. But what I did end up doing was we did the Dark album live, and that was the support band for that Cranberries tour.
Oh, really? Yeah.
So I was in the Dark live band for that tour. I quit the job. That was 2016, and I went on tour with the Cranberries in Dark, the band, and I was also a tech for the Cranberries.
Of course, yeah.
Which was tough, doing 2 jobs on one tour, and it was just a psychologically difficult tour, but I didn't mind. Dolores always took care of me financially, and it was just a nice situation. I loved Dolores. I loved her, and her boyfriend Ole was a good mate of mine as well. And we moved back. We sold the gaff, and I went first, and then the gaff sold the night before we put it on for sale. So it was like it was meant to be. We got more than we were planning for it, so we were able to get a deposit for a gaff over here or whatever. And which is a position of fucking extreme privilege right now.
Tough.
And I recognize that, you know what I mean. Yeah. But I did work for 20 years, and I put in my hours. But I know how lucky I am, and I know how difficult it is for a lot of people out there. So I don't want to be like, oh, I have you don't have it, you know what I mean. But I work for it, and so we have our little gap down in Wexford, and it's cool, but. So went on the tour, and then sadly Dolores was unwell a few months into the tour, and the tour got cancelled, and she passed away a few months later, unfortunately, which is really sad. She was a good head, you know, and can't stress that enough because
that was a bit shocking, that one, like,
you know,
it kind of came out of the blue a little bit, didn't it?
Yeah, you know, I mean, wouldn't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but you know, not for me.
Yeah.
And not because of her, just because I know what it's like to be around pressure, and I know that life is really difficult, like, and you know, I get a bit of depression myself, and you know, like substance abuse. Now, Dolores wasn't a drug taker, don't get me wrong, but you know, there was drink involved probably, and I don't even know the facts. I decided to never look at the facts of what happened.
Of course,
I was just mourning my friend.
Like,
I was mourning my friend, and mourning my friend's girlfriend as well. You know what I mean? Which was important to me at the time.
To be there for somebody. Like,
I tried, He had a tough time, and I was trying to be there for him, and so I found myself. She passed away. And then I found myself in Wexford, you know, and we're lucky we have a little cottage, I wouldn't even call it, it's like a converted garage that we do Airbnb out of, and we live near the sea down near Carrickclose. So, you know, we're able to kind of scrape by, and my wife works for a guy in California still, you know, he's a whole other story, we'll get into that. He's a record producer from the 60s,
oh,
you know.
Wow,
he produced like Mamas and Papas and you know, Spirit in the Sky and Chris Isaac and all that, and he's a very eccentric character, Eric Jacobson. He's in his 80s now, but he was kind of like he was my mother-in-law's boyfriend at the time.
Right.
So he's kind of like a grandfather-in-law to my kids, and my wife still works for him. So we were lucky to have that extra income, and so I set up my gear. And I started working, you know, and I just started making music because that's what I do. Like when everything is shit ain't working out for me, I just turn on my gear and I pick up a guitar or a keyboard, and I just start making music because that's always been what saved me in my life, and it's been the only thing that's always been there for me. And like even if I never put out music, I'm always writing or making music. And in the back of my mind, you could circle back to the original question because I told you I could talk. The original question was, is this a new thing for me? And it's a complicated answer because it's not. Even though to most people out there are like, what the... You know what I mean? They don't understand. Yeah. They saw me being a DJ something, and then they're like, what, you're fronting a band now? And they think it's kind of an effort thing, or that I'm not, or that I'm trying to prove something, but I'm not. I have nothing to prove. But I've always written. So since I started writing before I ever started making music, and I've never done anything with my writing. I have like boxes and boxes of books that I've written, and poetry and prose and you name it, and just notebooks full of crap. I write, that's how I get it out, you know. I make music, and I've always made music for rappers on the side. That really started when I was doing the licensing and stuff in Germany, and I've always done it in my life. And I was working for a couple of different people at the time. Spoke Matombo down in South Africa. I'd done a couple of records with him, and he's done pretty well. And Shimon, who's now in Bon Voyage with Arvine. Shimon and I had met in New York years ago and done records together, and a bunch of other rappers I was working with during my life. And I was working on a bunch of music for them. And the pandemic came about, and you know, things just kind of froze up a bit in the world. And I wasn't getting the lyrics and the vocals I wanted back from people.
Exactly.
No offense to anyone involved. They're all
totally
great artists, but it wasn't fitting.
Yeah.
And I had about 5 tracks, and I was like, maybe I'll just do some vocals of these myself and try to sell them off or do something with them. And then the first thing I did was that track, The Pills.
Excellent.
And I was like, this is exactly like kind of what I wanted to do, and it involved my writing, and you know what I mean. Yeah. And so I was like, within a couple of weeks of doing that, I was like, all right, this is what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. And now that's probably 2.5 years ago or something. So that now I'm doing it. You know, best I can anyway.
It's unbelievable.
But you know, with no expectations. You know.
Just, it came out of nowhere. What a fucking tune, like. Yeah.
Thanks. And I really have no expectations. I just have to do it. Like, that's it, you know. So the good thing about that is there's some like freedom in that, you know.
Yeah, it's your own thing.
Yeah, and like I know working with different PR companies or this and that, you know, you can get funneled into sound in a certain way, and I definitely want to go that way with Def Nettle, but I needed to do a few to get them out of me first, you know, and that's what I'm doing at the moment, is getting a few out of me. Now I have an album finished, so I like, you know, I'm hemming and hawing about putting it out in October, you know.
Yeah.
I can't really afford to press vinyl and do all that right now.
Yeah.
So I might just do a digital version of it for now. You know, I already have my eye on a second one, you know, and I have a bunch of stuff written and recorded, and like, so I've been making that album for 2 years, and it's done. Like, I finished it at Easter. So
and are you happy with it?
Yeah, I am, and like 5 of the singles, or four of the tracks are already out as singles, but yeah, like I'm there's a couple more tracks like The Pills that are more punky on it, and then I think like it started out where I was really like, oh, it has to have a little influence, like we were talking about, from that early 90s kind of period, and I think like as it's evolved over the 2 years, it still has that, but I also wanted to involve a bit more funk and a little bit more like eclecticism to it. Listen to me. This is my third coffee today. So it's definitely not as straight up, like, and I was always wary of the post-punk
label
term.
I
don't know if I like it, and I don't know if I want to. You know, there's a post-punk element to it, but there's a post-punk element to freaking Tyler Swift and shit.
I don't think he's as post-punk as, you know. There's post-punk bands.
There's
post-punk bands.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like this, like, I know that sounds ridiculous to say, but some of them are really into it, you know, and like, you know that they're post-punk.
Yes.
These guys can skate on a lot of different genre levels. Like, and I think it's better to be that way as well.
Yeah.
It'll appeal to more people.
I've always worried about getting stuck in one thing because I'm not one thing.
Yeah.
And I learned that lesson in the 90s as a hip-hop DJ in Ireland. You know, I had a big bunch of hip-hop records, but I always wanted to be throwing in, I hate the word trip-hop too, because it's just like post-punk, you know, but like instrumental, weirder ideas that used hip-hop but brought it somewhere else. And, you know, there was a lot of criticism at the time for doing that, you know. It's like, Dublin's a small place, and it was even smaller back then. So I learned that lesson that whenever I go from now on, I'm not going to be like, even when I landed in New York and it was that Electroclash thing or new disco or whatever people wanted to call it, I was always like, yeah, let's make a punk rock song and put it out in that scene, or, you know what I mean, let's do something completely different. And I think it's just important to just do what's good for your soul, like, you know, and that's what I'm trying to do, rather than like trying to please one certain part of the population. I will say that in Dublin I have found it's interesting, but the people that are receptive and nice, like the punk scene in Dublin, people are actually kind of nice.
Yeah.
It's always kind of surprising to me, you know, because I'm always expecting a load of people in scenes to be cunty, you know, especially when you're not specifically into one thing.
Yeah.
And so that's a nice thing. Yeah. You know, there's a lot of heads who are really supportive and cool with doing.
Well, it has changed. You see, it was kind of a little bit shitty.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
We started off like the first band I was in, we weren't accepted by anybody. Like,
when was that? What year was that?
That would have been early 2000s. Like.
Okay. Yeah.
It was kind of. It was a bit shitty that way, like, you know. But
you had to be a certain kind of punk rock kind of thing.
There was kind of two sort of camps.
Right.
You were either one or the other.
Okay.
And neither of them wanted anything to do with us because we were quite offensive now. Like, it was sort
never.
Of, yeah, really, we know we were in wars back then, like, you know? And we were wild as well. So we never got invited back to parties.
Right.
Like that,
yeah.
So nobody ever really got to know us, and we were kind of nice as well.
Yeah.
Like, what we were trying to do was get everybody involved and not just have it as you're either on this side or that side.
Right.
But it didn't work.
Yeah.
It's kind of worked now.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of a nicer generation, this generation.
And they're inclusive.
Inclusive, very
you
inclusive.
You can be a girl. You can be
exactly.
You can be gay. You can be
whatever you want.
Yeah. And in fact, the more there are of people who are different, the better it is.
Definitely.
And I've noticed that on a lot of the shows here. Like, I went to see, it was the first show that I went to see here where I really saw that. It was a band called Enola Gay from Belfast.
Yes, excellent band.
And I went to see them. That was probably 2 years ago or something, you know. And the first thing I noticed, apart from the energy in the place, which was fucking brilliant, was the guy on one side of me must have been 60, and he looked like, you know, he was a teacher, you know.
Yeah.
And the girl next to me and her girlfriend were there, and then there was a load of boyish lads in front of us headbanging, and anybody who got pushed or anything, those lads would be protecting the L guy and the young ones, and then the young ones would be, you know, like really nice if they got pushed into it, and it created this really cool, like, you know, in your life when you have seminal gigs, you know, like for some people it's, you know, going to see freaking Led Zeppelin or going to see, you know, that one gig where it changes your life. And I've had a few of those across my life, and definitely that Enola Gay one was like, I felt like, oh well, I could actually do whatever I want now, you know, and like, you know, that scene is really healthy and special,
definitely,
even if it's only gonna last it that night. You know, that's enough. That gave me energy for years. It was like, that's cool, you know, and I was motivated by that, and you know, and then it's funny, I met the Enola Gay guys maybe a year later, just with a friend of mine, and they had that vibe. Like, remember your name. They meet you at the beginning of the night, they pitch at the end of the night, they come up and say, oh, see you later, Glenn. Like they had that, like, they're nice dudes. You know, they present themselves as nice dudes, and I was like, oh, that's super cool. Like, that's the way it should be, and
it is the way it should be.
And I've been in too many too cool for school scenes.
It's horrible.
It's horrible, and it's not creative, and it doesn't. Nothing blooms out of it. You know, like I saw it in Dublin in the 90s, then I saw it a couple of times in New York. I definitely saw it at the end of my time in Berlin. And I've learned to steer clear of that sort of thing. You know, one group will come out of that. You know, and everyone else will disappear.
And they keep everybody down. That's the thing. Like, you can't grow that way. Like, your scene doesn't grow, and your scene shit, and it ends. Yeah,
it does, because nobody wants to go out and like be attituded at. You know, I want to go out and meet people, and especially since I've been dry, I've been off the drink for 5 years. Sometimes I go to gigs now on my own, like you do yourself. So when I go to a gig on my own, I want to be able to talk to people, because, you know, I'm not pitched up and just falling into people, like, and I notice, like, I go to gigs on my own all the time, and I always leave with a new mate. Like, I'm always meeting people, and it's cool. It's not like the weird dude in the corner. It's like, it's all right, you know.
It's all right to go on your own.
And that's here now, you know. That's the way things are in some of the scene here now. You know, I think structurally, the way the business is set up here can be problematic, and you know, it's a small country, so you're going to have your giants in terms of promotion and this and that and the other, and you know, woe betide if you don't get on with somebody in those giants. And no need to talk about names or faces or anything like that, but that can be difficult for everybody. And
on all levels, even at our level, like, we were a relatively smallish band, like, but we find that as well, you know. Certain people, you might rub the wrong way once, and then next while you're not getting the gig anywhere. Or
certain people be like telling me in 1997 you'll never work in this town again, and they were right.
Like Glen Brady.
No, I'm not as egotistical to think that they still think that way, but you know, I've been in situations over the last year or two where I've seen groups of individuals who are in the business, who had a certain social structure set up years ago, and it's the same social structure that's there now. And I think that's sad for them. Not so much for the scene, because I'm going to make music no matter what. I'll go to fucking Spain tomorrow and get a gig. You know, like, I'm not controlled by anybody, and I exercised that a long time ago. You know, but it detracts from what they're capable as human beings, because they're holding on to small, big fish little pond mentality. And you know, I get it though. There's a certain level of financial control to maintain a company in a small country like this, and I reserve judgment. Like, I don't need to judge, like, because like we're all just trying to get by anyway. Even people who are told pricks to you about business, you know.
I do understand, like, big promoters not paying people well and stuff like that, and I understand that at my level, it's a lot easier for me to spread money around if I have it. I'm not beholden to anybody. I don't have people working for me or anything like that. So I do understand that, like, but at the same time, go fuck yourself. You know what I mean?
You know, I there's the issue of the amount they pay people, and there's also the emission. For me, it's more, and I get it from that point, and I'm financially at a place where I can play for free. I don't have a lot of money, but I'm like ready to play.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, but I think it's more the control aspect that disturbs me, because that's what contracts a scene, That's what makes people go, I don't want to be in Ireland, I want to leave, I've had some interesting conversations. I won't name a name, but a DJ that lives outside of Ireland, and she's popular or whatever, Irish girl, and she told me a story about an experience in Ireland that made her want to leave. And it was literally the exact same story I could have told you about me in the year 2000.
Yeah.
And it was 20 years later. And I'm like, listening to the exact same story with the exact same characters saying the exact same shit.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, fair play to her for being like myself and going on and having a career regardless. But I felt bad for the person involved more than her. I was like, oh, you didn't grow at all in those 20 years, dude?
Still the same.
That sucks for you, man. Because like you've so much to give, like with that power, and you've so much to spread, and you're just contracting everything, and it's all pretty abstract because we can't say any names. Come on. No, I don't.
I'm naming names left, right, and center.
The reason I wouldn't name names is not for their own protection, is because I feel like that would contribute to the problem.
Yeah.
Rather than being a part of the solution. Then if you're getting personal, then you're contributing to it, to the shit stirring, and I wish them the best. Like even people who've been shitty to me in the business, like I actually can say, like 99.9% of people.
But that's a good attitude to have. Otherwise, you're chipping away at your own self.
Yeah, and your work.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's nothing going to get in the way of your work than a load of angst.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you can put that into the work, but, like, ultimately, like...
If you're creating it, it's going to block you,
It is, or it's going to send you on a road that you may not want. It's just not going to contribute, I think, like, it was funny, I was coming to the car, I was like, we're going to talk about it, and that was one of the things I want to talk about, is, like, the act of making the music, of writing the lyrics, of making the chords, or this and that,
So let's go into that process then.
Yeah.
At the start, do you come with the lyrics, or do you come with the beat, or is there
it's
different.
It's different every time. I'm always writing. So in my phone, I have an app with a vocal recorder. I've got my notes and word processing in my phone. So and I travel with a book.
Yeah.
So I have constant ways to be writing all the time.
Yeah.
Musically, then I go through stages. Like, I gave up the pot about 2 years ago.
Okay.
And I was worried I wouldn't be able to ever make music again.
Really? Yeah.
Because it was just always there.
Yeah.
And I hadn't had an acoustic guitar for 20 years or something. So I bought myself an acoustic guitar, and I was like, every time I want to smoke a rocket, I'll play some acoustic stuff, So as I was saying, I have all this equipment I've acquired over 25 years in the business. So I have my studio kitted out, with every kind of toy you can imagine, and analog gear and digital gear. And for about 2 years, I wrote all my songs sitting at the kitchen table with a €100 acoustic guitar.
Wow.
So like the last couple of years, the songs started at my kitchen table when my kids are having dinner, or waiting for the kettle to boil, or I'm trying to avoid having to smoke or something, And so that really helped. That was good. It changed the way I made music, because I was like, all right, it might not end up being an acoustic guitar song, but I might write the structure at the table.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find that's really helpful. And then I for the most part for Def Nettle, I'll program a beat then that goes with whatever riff I'm working on, or chord structure or something. And then the lyrics will either work or they won't.
Yeah.
And I'll just get rid of it if I don't find a lyric that works on it, and I'll try something else. And then when I see like a riff working with a beat, with a vocal, even if it's just 4 bars of a verse, and I'm buzzing, I'm like, oh, that's cool, that works, and I like that, and that's the vibe I'm trying to create, and then the song will go from there. And then I usually kind of get to a point where I've written guitars, I've written a bass line, I've programmed a beat, I've recorded a rough vocal, so I have a song there.
Yeah.
And then for Def Nettle, it was important to me for the first year that it was a live sound.
So you introduced it to the band then?
Yeah, well, in the beginning I didn't have a band, so I had Jay Oglesby, who's a great drummer, teaches at BIM, and Jay was really supportive, and so I would just send that over to Jay,
right,
and then I'd send one without the drum pattern on it, and Jay would play me a drum beat and send me, and he has his own place to record it, so he'd send me the recorded drums, and then I'd get into it, and then for the first few months, because it was during lockdown and all that, and then afterwards, with my experience in the business, I had different guitarists all over the place that are my mates, that are great. It's much better guitarists than I am. So first one, say for the Pills, I sent that over to Dan Donnelly. He lives in the UK. I'm trying to think of the bands he plays in now because it's really annoying me. What's the most well-known crusty band from the 90s in the UK? I forget what they're called. We're going to look it up. His name's Dan Donnelly. He's a great guy. And I bet you it'll be right on his... We're looking on Facebook now there, listeners. So I sent it to Dan. He's a well-known singer-songwriter from Belfast that lives in the UK. The Levellers, he's in.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah. So Dan plays guitarist with the Levellers. So, he played something very similar to what I'd recorded, but he added, a couple of sevenths and fifths and recorded it over a nice mic on a beautiful guitar and then sent that back to me. So there you had the drums and the guitars. Yeah. And then I re-recorded the vocal once I had them all kind of put together, Then I started working with Joe Donegan. He's a well-known guitarist, plays around Dublin, session guitarist, and plays in a load of cover bands and stuff. He's just a good mate of mine I've known for 25 years. He's just dead on. And I was working, that was our third single was Architecture Dan played on. And he was playing with the band in the beginning, but he's a little busy at the moment because he makes money from all those other bands.
Yeah, of course.
But Dan was coming up and down for 6 months working on that song Architecture with me. And I to this day, I think it's our best song. And he did a brilliant job on it. The second single was War Machine. And that one had Andy Rourke from the Smiths playing bass.
Right.
Again, that one, Jay had done the drums, I had done the guitar, then Andy sent over the bass line, and Andy was living in New York at the time, and he recorded the bass over a couple of weeks or whatever it was, but one take wonder, and there wasn't much to be done. It was just a great bass line. And then my friend Graham Slattery, who played with the Devlins, he also does a little pop band called Boy in Chords. They have a couple of singles out. He's just one of those musicians who's beautiful on the guitar, He could turn any shitty riff into something gorgeous. Yeah. And he in fact played a couple of licks on Architecture as well.
Wow.
But I sent it to him and he was like, just erase all the guitars. And then he sent me back just beautiful guitars. And that was War Machine, So basically I did the vocal, the drum pattern, the guitars and the bass, but all my mates replayed all my crappy parts. Yeah. And then Architecture, Jay played bass or played drums. Joe and Graham Slattery played guitars, and I did all the synths and vocals and stuff. And then, let's see, we did another one called Invisible, which was an interesting one because I had then put together a full band. So this was 6 months ago, and we've been rehearsing for a while. We're just, it hasn't been announced yet, but we have our first couple of gigs. One of them's with you.
Yes.
So we'll talk about that in a minute. But so I had the idea. I really wanted to do a song with the band, a live recording, like a live song, So Jay was busy, and one of his proteges, a guy named Jason Fleming, he's in his early 20s. He's in BIM.
Yeah.
And he's just brilliant drummer. I mean, he's just brilliant. He plays. All he does is play drums.
It's mad, these young kids, isn't it?
It's all he's ever done. He doesn't drink. He doesn't party. All he does is play, and he's just brilliant. Yeah. First rehearsal, I sent him a load of songs. You expect it'll take a few rehearsals. And we'll get it right. And I sent him a few songs. First rehearsal, he's like, "Want to start?" I was like, "Yeah." It was just me and him, and we had the bass and guitars and backing. And he's like, "Okay, let's go." And he played the whole show. Yeah. Perfect. Like cymbal for cymbal, note for note, perfect. And was just super nice. So he played drums. And then during this time, I met a friend of a friend named Eli Siegel. He's a bass player originally from New York, but he's married to an Irish girl here. And he just had a great vibe about
He's
him.
fantastic.
And I wanted him on stage. And I just really liked the guy the first time I met him. And I just knew he was going to work in the band. And so Eli immediately, 2 weeks after I met Eli, he was in the band or something like that, you know. Because he has loads of basses and stuff, but he hadn't played in, I don't know how long, maybe 10 years or something.
Really?
He hadn't played in any bands or anything in 10, 15 years. And
the stage presence is excellent.
He's great, yeah. He just has, there's something about him.
Yeah.
So I knew that even before I saw him play bass. So met him at a party, friend's party. And then guitars were played by a guy named Ronnie Carroll, or Ronan Carroll. I can never figure out which one he wants to be on. I called him Ronnie, so I think he went, well, you've called me Ronnie in the press release, so call me that. Hi, Ronnie. So Ronnie I had met, I was on tour in San Francisco about 15 years ago, and he was friends with the singer, and he was living in San Francisco and came to the gig. He was an Irish guy.
Yeah.
So I'd met him there, and we'd gone on the bat there that night in San Francisco and got on or whatever. So he had been at the gig at the Sugar Club. He'd come to see us. So that's where I reconnected with him, and I ended up asking him if he'd come on board. So that song called Invisible was me and Ronnie. Ronnie sent me a riff, and I immediately did the vocal. Yeah. I wrote it in 2 seconds. I wrote the whole song in 2 seconds. And it was.
I love them ones.
Oh, listen. I was reading the Bono book, you know, or listening to it on tape, you know. And the first part of the Bono book is all about his childhood and stuff, and about the family, the Rowans. And as I said, I'd been a skateboarder when I was younger, and knew Clive Rowan, who owned Skate City and stuff, and they were all in the book. So that song is about that period in my life, and so that just came together. So we recorded the drums out with Darren Nolan and Gory, and boom, that was just, it was the quickest Def Nettle song I ever done. I put it together in 2 weeks and it was done. So that came out as a single. And yeah, so that's the evolution. There's a lot of different musicians. Obviously, I'm writing the songs, and but you know, with all the songs, I try to not be like, I'm the writer, I'm keeping the publishing.
Of course,
I don't do all that. I try to include as much as I can, and so, you know, especially someone's like, yeah, I'm going to come play and I'll stick this out for a year, you know, it's like, all right, well, let's get you into the writing, you know. Yeah. When Eli started playing bass, he was like, I want to do it, but I don't want to just be playing everybody else's bass lines. I want to write some bass lines. So I was like, okay, come to my house, it's fucking right, let's do it. And in fairness to him, he's come to my house a few times and knocked it out of the park. He's a good player. And so that's been kind of cool.
It's never map.
You know, I just did a single a couple of weeks ago, which isn't really part of the Def Nettle catalog in a way. It called The Narrowback, and it was a collaboration with a traditional Irish musician. Yeah. And you know what that was like, and I'm really glad it's out, because it was something I really wanted to talk about from a creative point of view. But I also wanted to, as we were talking about the post-punk thing, and I felt like, you know, when I do interviews or talk to labels and this and that, they were like trying to force me into that. Yeah. And I wanted to just do a big creative curveball for myself. Yeah. And like, so I didn't do, well, you know, I usually do a bit of PR in Germany and in France and Spain and the US and stuff. And that one I just put it out. Yeah. Spur of the moment with a couple of weeks. So there's not really a video and stuff. And I also wanted to do it before I talk myself out of it. You know what I mean? I felt like I was going to talk myself out of it, and I was like, you know what, so I'm just going to put this out for like, because I wanted to I have to remind myself that it's not about like, you know, trying to fit into, you know, this genre at the moment where it's like, oh, there are all these post-punk bands, you know, or whatever, which I love, don't get me wrong, I love all those bands, but I don't feel like I'm one of them, so I wanted to do something to break my own creative spirit away from all that, and I'm really happy with it. And I also felt like I needed in this period of creation to get a story out about my childhood in the Bronx. Yeah, I lived in the States till I was, you know, 10 years old, and that's a huge part of me as well.
So it's about how you felt as an immigrant or wherever.
Yeah. I think you know, none of us can get away from the anti-immigrant feeling that's online in Ireland at the moment. God, yeah. And you know, it's as you said. Oh God, like it's so.
I don't know where it's come from. Like,
Well, I personally think there's a shitload of money coming in from right wing and
most likely,
in the UK and in the US, especially when they saw the absolute liberalization of our culture, you know, and they didn't like that, you know, because they like to think of Ireland as their little Catholic Ireland, you know.
Exactly.
I would imagine I don't know. That's my own conspiracy theory. Also, you know, well, listen, I don't want to point fingers again at the people who are doing that, you know. Everyone can have their opinion. We can live in a society where people have the wrong opinion.
Yeah.
And I mean, unfortunately, it's very negative. But for me, what I wanted to do, rather than criticize those people, was to go, you know, because you always hear this one, especially from Irish Americans, well, we came here and we worked.
Yeah.
We came here legally and we worked. Let me tell you one thing. As a son of a guy from Cavan, I knew fuckloads of Irish Americans who came over and took cocaine and heroin and drank and never worked at the time and were illegal. You know, so that's bullshit. Yeah. You know, this idea the Irish built America, they did in their holes. You know, many of them died drunk under the fucking Brooklyn Bridge too. You know, so I mean, having said that, plenty of Irish people went there and worked, including my own man. But like it's just. I mean, you know, again, I hate criticizing individuals, but I have a lot of extended family in the States who would be Trump supporters.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Straight up, full on. And when people say to me, I can't believe Trump got in, I just think back of being 5 years old and listen to what those people had to say about black people, about gay people, about Jewish people, about their Italian fucking neighbors who were in their own Catholic church. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like it's nothing new to me.
Yeah.
And so I think I just wanted to talk about what it was like to be an Irish immigrant in the Bronx in New York in the 70s and 80s and how we were outside the culture, how my family felt. Like my mom moved to America when she was 15, her mom had died when she was 10, her and her sisters all got moved out from Galway to an aunt in the Bronx. My father was grew up in a dairy farm in Cavan. He moved to New York, I think he was 17, to work, you know, and when we went, they married young. When we went to school, primary school, elementary school, as they call it in America, you know, my old man didn't know how to teach me how to play baseball.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We spent Sundays in Gaelic Park and he was playing for Monaghan. You know what I mean? He was playing GAA. You know, we were outside the culture, you know. And now their kids have become part of the culture and part of the Trump scene and all that, you know. But back then we weren't.
Yeah.
And we were outsiders and you felt that. And that's what I wanted to talk about with the Narrowback, the single, you know. I wanted to get that out before I move on to the album.
Yeah.
I kind of felt like I don't want to put out the album until I finished that, you know. So now I'm like, okay, that's out.
Yeah.
So now that's out a week. What did I say? Wednesday. It's only came out last Tuesday. So it's only been out 8 days. And I'm already, yesterday was the first day I was like, okay.
Move on.
Now I need to think about the album. The album's done. How am I going to put it out? How am I going to make a video? Yeah. How am I going to, like, I can't afford the vinyl definitely this year. Like, I've too much going on with my family and this and that. So, what am I going to spend to promote it? Where am I going to promote it? And you know, is there even gigs for, you know, our band out there? You know?
Definitely. 100%.
Well, we'll see. You know, it's talk about some of those powers that be may not think so.
Fuck them.
No, you know, it's you know, I'm not 21 either, you know, and part of playing live is being out in a scene and being part of it.
True,
you know,
yeah.
And I'm at home putting kids to bed, you know.
Yeah.
So if I am getting gigs, it's from the likes of you or someone who knows what they're doing or someone who's heard of me, or, you know, we've been lucky enough. We've been on the Fanning Live at Whelan's, and we did the sessions of from Oblivion Live. Yeah. Funny story about that one while we're on stories. That's run by a guy named Andrew Bass.
Right.
Hi, Andrew. And Andrew managed the first band I was ever in when I was about 19 or 20.
Really?
In Dublin,
yeah,
in the early 90s. And I never saw him again.
Right.
Never saw Andrew again in my life. Heard about him here or there. Yeah. You know, I think he might have promoted some Damien Dempsey stuff or something. I heard about him somewhere along the way. And then we got booked for that show, and he's the presenter. You know, and in my mind, I was like, there's no way he's going to remember me 30 years ago from this little kid who was very quiet in the corner while there was all the other band members talked. You know, and we're out at the venue, and it was 9:00 in the morning, and see this car coming in, the window open, and he's like, Glenn, what's the story? And he totally remembered me, and it was a really nice reunion. And, good vibes, you know, like he's a good vibes person, and that's why he's liked and why he's still doing stuff, and that's why I think his show is really good.
It is good,
you know, it's always awkward, you know, filming a live set at 9 a.m.
Yeah.
But you know what, like once those lights come on,
oh yeah,
the
frontman comes out.
Eddie has the dildo out. No, you know, I don't know. Like, I definitely shooting things out his arse at 9 a.m. No, I definitely, like, I don't, you know, being frontman is not the center of it. Like, I have to do it because they're my songs, but I don't see myself as a big entertainer. I just like if I'm booked for the show, I'll do my best to perform the songs, and you know, I'm like, you know, like I think one of the reasons I like to do it is, again, related to being sober. So, and that's probably, we haven't really touched that, but that's kind of part of all this. Is that before, when I wasn't sober, I wasn't being a frontman to anything.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I think getting sober and performing and performing those lyrics, I think it's intertwined. I think, like, if I was to have a drink and perform those lyrics, then I would be shy.
There'd be a different feeling.
I just wouldn't be good.
Oh, really?
Because it wouldn't be believable.
Yeah.
So the only reason I can actually do them live is because what I'm telling you, they're real stories. I'm not making it up. Like, you know, the lyrics are about dudes who died, or women who took too many pills and did this and that, and whatever, or myself in the 80s in a depressed Dublin, or whatever it is. Like, so in order to be convincing to myself and to who is in front of me, I have to be sober, or else it just wouldn't work. Right. Even one drink, that'd be it. I wouldn't believe it. I wouldn't believe it, and then no one else is gonna fucking believe. Excuse me. No one else is gonna believe it if I don't believe it. So that's definitely related. Like, I have to be stone cold sober, and I think, like, it was too easy for me to be the maddest person in the room.
Oh really?
Yeah. Oh Jesus, man. Yeah, like you don't know me as that.
No.
Oh yeah, I'm the loudest, maddest person in the room when there's drink taken and all the rest.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm the worst. I'm the last to bed. I'm hyper.
You're looking for the next thing the whole time.
Yeah. Whereas, like, now I'm able to, like, be. It's funny, like, I definitely thought all my life I was this mad extrovert, you know what I mean? And I was always the loud guy, you know, and I have a loud voice anyway, which lends itself to the microphone. But I was always the loudest dude in the room, and I never liked it underneath. There was a part of me that didn't like that.
It didn't sit well with you?
Yeah, but I was still doing it, and the madder out of it I got, the louder I was, and the, you know, tension grabbing. And one thing I've realized since then is that's not who I am.
Yeah. I'm
definitely not the loudest person in the room now. Yeah. And I've learned to have fun not being the loudest person in the room, which I didn't even know was possible, you know, because I was like, I had the phrase, pull the cord. Once the cord is, you know, let's go, you know, like, go till I drop type thing, you know. And living in cities, like living in Brooklyn in the 2000s, living in Berlin, you know, these places where you have permission to go that way, you know. I did notice along the way there was mistakes I made, opportunities I lost because of
who you were,
because how I was behaving. Yeah, definitely. And I think, like, being, you know, I turned 50 this year, so I think, like, I feel like, not that I've been given the chance, but because I'm giving myself the chance to do Def Nettle, I think, like, I owed it to myself to not make silly mistakes. Yeah. Like, you know, if I do it for a year, if I do it for 10 years, you know, the day I go, all right, I'm going to go stop doing this, if that ever happens, I want to look back and go, well, on that one, I didn't ever screw up an opportunity because I was out of my head. Yeah. Also, I'm a dad. I don't want to screw up my kids by being mad out of it. Yeah. And I'm not the kind of guy who can go out for a drink. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm the guy who goes out for 100 drinks.
Yeah, I'm the same, but I found now with the band, with this band, with the Nils, I have a little switch where I'm on stage, the switch goes on and it's Eddie Nil. Okay. Off the stage, the switch goes off and I'm back to me, like, do you know what I mean? The band before that I was in, I didn't have that switch, like, it was like...
You were just always on.
It was a progression of being oh, now I'm mental, oh shit. You know? Now I'm shitting myself at the Christmas table in front of me parents and laughing, thinking it's funny. Like, no, that's not funny. You know what I mean? You know, grow the fuck up. Yeah. So I had to build that little switch in, because it took a few years out of music, but then build that little switch in. And now it's safe.
You certainly turn it on when it's on.
Yeah.
You're brilliant. Yeah. Like the energy when you're on stage. I saw you play, not the Workman's, what's the other place?
The Grand Social.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, the room was just filling up. Who are you supporting that night?
I think it might be the Cro-Mags or something.
It was Cro-Mags night, yeah. You know, and there was some older dudes there, you know. Yeah. And I liked the way you just got up and you started. It was like what I would do. It's not like, hey, come on, everybody in front. It was good. You just started playing. But it was an older punk rock guy beside me, and he kind of nudged me and he goes, who's that? You know, and I says, oh, that's the Nails or whatever. And he goes, your man's fucking brilliant, isn't he? You know, and I was, he's like, I'll come to this again. I was like, yeah. I was like, right on. Like, I was like, that was cool. And you turned it on. Yeah. And it just, the room warmed up, you know, and hopefully I can do that. That's a lot to aspire to be able to get on and just, that's nice, you know.
I know you do have great banter on stage and great stage.
I need.
You've got a great voice as well.
I have a big voice.
Yeah, big voice. Yeah.
You know, I played one gig in Whelan's where it just didn't work.
Right.
You know that this life.
Yeah, that happens.
We played one gig. I don't remember what it was. It was 6 months ago. You know, I was upstairs at Whelan's and it was like Sunday night. And everyone was 2 hours late going on stage. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning. Everyone was tired. Yeah. And it was like it just. Yeah. Nothing made them laugh. Nothing worked, and I was like, "Oh fuck," you know. Yeah. But I also know that that's part of this. Yeah. That you can't go up every night and have a great show. You know, once in a while, it's and if they don't know your songs, they don't know you. Yeah. And you're not a well-known band. That's just how it's going to be. Yeah. So it's good to get your ass kicked like that
big
once
time,
in a while.
Big time. It happened to us just recently. Now we were good and all, but it was just the band that was on before us. They were called the Skunts from Belfast. Yes, they are fucking phenomenal, so and they blew us off the stage. Yeah, and I was like, oh fuck, there's no way I'm gonna fucking follow that. Yeah. So I got over the edge then with the drink and all that. Yeah, like, made a few mistakes on stage. Next night we were playing with them at a festival up north, and we were on before them. And we blew them off the stage. Like, you know what I mean? So I was like,
at least you got your.
Yeah, but I mean, it was immediately like a switch went off, and I'm like, you know what? Oh, that's not happening to me tomorrow night.
It's like being on acid or something. Yeah. It's like, you know, and you're blaming everything, and you know, I think like you have to decide. I'm going to do well here, no matter what. Yeah. You know, and that's
well, if it's a bad show, it's a bad show. You get over it and you move on. People that can't get over it, they're not going to last. It's frontmen. Like, you know.
Yeah, I always find it's a bummer. I always find if I have a bad show, it's one of those shows where there's someone there that I want to be good for. Yeah. You know what
you're probably trying too hard.
Yeah. But I think I've got over that one now. Yeah. We'll see. I think a part of it is appreciating that you're up there. Yeah. You know? Knowing like this could be the last time I'm up here. Bands fall apart. Things happen. You know, like I have to appreciate this moment because, you know, when you go in the grave, you've only done X amount of gigs. Yeah. So you may as well be like, you know what? I might not get up and be like Michael Jackson up here. You know what I mean? I'm not like totally blowing the crowd away, but you have to get up and like enjoy it, you know, like that's the secret.
We've always kind of said that we're not stars or anything like that, and like in the punk scene, we would take a look at the kids that are up the front. We're vessels for them to enjoy themselves, you know. Yeah. And the more they enjoy themselves, the better we're gonna be. Yeah. And then the more they enjoy themselves, the better we. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think we haven't had that opportunity yet. Yeah. You know, so hopefully over the next year, all I can do is keep releasing shit and hoping that you know. I think like you can't dwell on it too much as well, you know. The planning and the business, it's all such a pain in the arse in one way, you know, because the fun part is writing the music and playing the music, you know. And there's so many other variables to the live thing and to promoting it and this and that, especially with the social media and your Spotify numbers and all this business. It's a fucking nightmare.
I don't worry about any of that stuff. Yeah. I know you have to because
you know what it is? It's not even so much that I worry about it myself because, as I said, like I'm definitely just doing this because I need to get something out of me. Yeah. But because I've worked in the business for so long, there's always someone on the phone
Yeah.
that works in the business that I'm just friends with who has to give me their 10 cents. You know what I mean? Or we're like, well, if you're not getting 10, I mean, I spoke to a friend in the business like a couple months ago. Well, he's like, if you don't have 500,000 plays on Spotify, you're not really a band, And I was, I was like,
Jesus
well, I got like 12 hits on that one yesterday. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't even know if they were full plays.
Yeah.
But, hey,
I'm happy. I don't give a fuck.
Well, it's like, in the States especially, it's become so Spotify oriented, the business, that that's all there is. TikTok, Spotify, that's it. If you don't have a million, there's nobody put money into this, nobody coming to your shows, there's no nothing, because it's just how the business can be now, but it's very healthy to stay away from that. And so it's there, but I do avoid it a little bit as well, because you have to remember at the end of the day, like, if you're making music, the most important thing is that I hate the term, but you're expressing yourself.
Yeah.
That you're getting something out that you need to get out there. And that when you're finished and you listen back to the song, you go, oh, I'm fucking glad I got that out. I'm really glad I made that. I said what I wanted to say. It sounds the way the records I listened to sound, that I wanted my records to sound like. And I'm convinced by it. If you have that...
That's perfection.
Yeah, I mean, and especially what we do, probably imperfection is part of perfection as well.
Yeah.
We make songs that have, wouldn't call mistakes, but idiosyncrasies,
Definitely, yeah.
And so I'm not striving for perfection, but I'm definitely striving to make the records sound how I want them to sound.
Yeah.
And the Narrowback, the last single that's out a week, is a really good example of that. It's definitely not going to be something like the Pills and Architecture, those songs, and a song with Andy Rourke on it, they're obviously going to get more numbers, but something about the Narrowback was something that I always wanted to do. Yeah. So I did it. So I purposely not looked at anything, and I'm not looking at how that's doing, because it's done what I wanted to do already. The fact that I made it and it's out. It's done what I wanted to do, and I'm psyched on that. And I did it with a traditional Irish musician, Brian Duffy. There's a promoter out in the west of Ireland in Mayo called Webster, and he's been running gigs out there for 30 years, and a lot of people in the music business in Ireland know him because he's a great guy, character, and a good friend of mine, And so he's always over the years sent me musicians from out in that part of the world just to hear or have ideas for. And about 2 years ago, he sent me some songs from a guy named Brian Duffy, who's a trad musician, and he was looking for dance mixes of his stuff, or trying to get. And I was like, look, you know what?
Work. Yeah.
I was like, it doesn't work, and it's not what I do. I'm not like Tiesto or something. I'm like, it's just not what I do. But I said, but I liked the vibe off the guy, and I think we were just texting at first, but there was something about him I liked. And I said, well, why don't you send me your stuff? And he sent me 5 albums that have come out. And there was just something really I liked about it. And I listened to the albums, and they're just really nice songs, traditional Irish stuff, and mixture of a bit of pop and traditional Irish stuff. And I said, well, why don't you just leave it with me for a few months?
Yeah.
And let me see to some idea. And then, listening to the record one day, I drive to Dublin a lot for rehearsal. I was listening to the record one day, and I heard, a riff, and I was like, oh, I could sample that or replay it, or, so, and I had already written the lyrics to the Narrowback already. So I was like, then I just fitted, it worked, So, but the cool point about it was, Brian called me the other day, we were reviewing Hot Press, and he's a cool guy, Brian. He calls me and he goes, look, just wanted to say, I've been sending my music to Hot Press for 25 years. I've been dealing with journalists, agents, this and that my whole life, and always really wanted to have a review in Hot Press. And he goes, I woke up this morning, I was really chuffed.
No
like,
way.
For the first time in my life, I got a review in Hot Press, And he was like, I just wanted you to know that, and I wanted you to know how much that means to me and how it feels so good for me. And I was like, cool, that's all I need from that record. That's cool, and
that's brilliant.
I was delighted, and I could hear that he was genuinely stoked out of his face on it. He was like, this is awesome,
that's brilliant.
And so maybe that's what I'll get out of that record, and that's good enough. That's cool. Someone's happy, you know what I mean?
On a final note I was told a story that you were a stagehand for Alice Cooper at one stage. Is that true?
Yeah, well, as I said, I worked for the Stagehands Union in San Francisco. So I worked out of a venue in Northern California, Santa Rosa. It's a, kind of place where you'd have Hart and Willie Nelson and Alice Cooper and this and that and the other. So Alice Cooper rolled into town. So I was a stagehand at that event, and then I did well, so I ended up doing part of the tour. I was in charge of the guillotine.
Yes!
I did cut his head off.
Oh my God!
I mean, there was a tech there involved with it, but my job was like to get that done in that moment. Yeah,
that's amazing.
I did do that. Yeah. Funny. There was like.
Did it ever go wrong?
No, because it was a prop, but there was a giant Frankenstein version of him that got electrocuted. There was a part where he got his head chopped off. There was a part where he got burnt up. So there was a number of different things in the show. But at that venue you could end up doing it in any weekend. So yeah, I definitely did that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Glen Brady, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Cheers, man. Eddie. Big time. Nice one.
It's never map.
These are. When we were talking about stealing songs, I mean, about let's just walk like the Egyptians.
Oh, this is my name.
I like it a lot, though.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I just got it.
I know pretty much all the lyrics of this one.
Fucking sing it so.
It's got to build,
Oh, wait.
Shut the fuck up. Doesn't fucking matter if it's had a course sprat. Just beat them down. They can't fight back. The fish genocide will kill en masse. So grab your rods. We'll hook some bass. A fish genocide will kill en masse. So grab your rods. We'll hook some bass. This is the stupidest fucking tune.
I love
Kill
it.
a fish. There are a bunch of guns. Kill a fish. Spread better than horse. Kill fish. Come on, take them out. Come on, baby, and stomp the drought. Kill fish. There are a bunch of guns. Kill fish. Spread better than horse. Kill fish. Come on, take them out. Come on, baby, and stomp the drought. I fucking told you. Oh, it gets worse.
I think you need better.
So we bomb the crab and we'll nuke the dolphins. Kick the narwhal bastards in their flipper thing. You know they fucking have them, like, they're not quite legs, they're not really flippers, I don't know what to call them. Scaly fucking cobras think they own the sea. They're fucking in the water and it smells slightly like urine. Don't go swimming, fish, STDs. Don't go swimming, fish, STDs. Don't go swimming, fish, fucking there. Don't go swimming, whales, funkin' your hair. Time's up for a sulk. Do not act the wuss. Fucking uppercut the octopus. Time's up for a sulk. Do not the wuss. Fucking uppercut the octopus. Kill fish. There are a bunch of guns. Kill fish. Swim better than horns. Kill fish. Take them out. Come on, baby, and stop the drought. Kill fish. There are a bunch of guns. Kill fish. Swim better than horns. Kill fish. Come on, take them out. Come on, baby, and stop the drought. Kill fish. Bunch of guns. Kill fish. Swim better than horns. Kill fish. Take them out. Come on, baby, and stomp the trout. Come on, baby, and stomp the trout. Come on, baby, and stomp the trout. Kill fish.
One more tune! Oh, one more tune! Come on, the fuck! Oh my god. One more, man, come on.